Hey, it's Amethyst Virgo. If you're watching this, happy Valentine's Day, happy pre-Valentine's Day, happy post-Valentine's Day, whenever you're watching this video. This video does not really necessarily have to only be watched during Valentine's Day, but it is a topic a lot of people find themselves thinking about, reflecting about, which is just relationships and the patterns in your relationships and trying to find the ideal relationship or the ideal partner. And a lot of people going through ups and downs and having to reclaim themselves first, which is really what I want to talk about. So a lot of times people want to know, hey, am I compatible with this person? Like, here's this person's chart. Now, I do think that is helpful for established relationships. If you're in an established relationship or it looks like it's getting serious and you want to know, like, hey, how do we make this work? Let's look at our charts. I think that can be helpful, right? But when people want to just look at one person, like, is this the person for me? I think it's a little bit more complex than that. The first thing you need to do is start with yourself. And this video is going to be about yourself. And it's going to be about what you need, what you want, what does your chart say? Then you can map it out, the type of person that you might want to be in a relationship with. And I say that because even when I do synastry charts, I can't do a synastry chart or composite chart if I don't know your chart first. So I always look at the individual because it all starts with you. What are you willing to accept in a relationship? What issues do you have? What strengths do you have? What parts of you do you need a partner to acknowledge? Is what you really want something you're not acknowledging, right? What are your patterns? What are your triggers? What do you need? What do you care about? What do you need a person who is in a relationship with you to care about, right? What do you need a person who's in a relationship with you to understand about you? So that is why this video is going to be these steps that require you to understand your chart first, your needs first, because then you can see if your love interest or your current partner or your past partner, whatever the situation is, the match for you. Now, as we know, the sun sign is not all there is to your chart. However, when it comes to when it comes to the sun sign, it will require you to think about what types of traits do you exhibit, do you display that you need validation for. And validation doesn't mean attention seeking in this context, but think about, like, these are the types of people who are going to be receptive to what you show the world, right? What people who are receptive to your core energy make you feel a level of understanding, like people understand me, or people accept who I am. Remember your sun in terms of that identity piece. So think about it like this. Like, if you're an Aries, you need a partner who accepts your need for adventure. If you're a Taurus, you need someone who accepts your need for comfort. If you are a Gemini, you need someone who accepts your need to ask questions and be inquisitive. You need someone that's not going to be annoyed by that. If you are a Cancer sun, you might need someone who accepts a need for closeness and doesn't view it as being clingy. If you are Leo, you may need someone who accepts your need for fun. You don't want someone who's a wet blanket or someone who is just always down, can't ever do anything that's like interesting and engaging. If you're a Virgo, you need someone who accepts your need for answers, who understands that you have to think about things and you want to truly understand those. Not people who are just like brushing something with a broad stroke and ignoring your need as a Virgo to really, place things in order or to understand things in a way that allows for there to be a level of like, figuring things out, figuring out problems, identifying solutions to things. If you're a Libra, you need someone who accepts your need to relate. And relating for you may mean you need to relate to different people. You might be a little bit more social, some Libras, or you find ways to link with other people. So if someone tries to stifle that or gets like jealous, that can be something that, could be an issue if this is a relationship. Scorpio, you may need someone who accepts your need for intensity, not someone who's scared by that. Sagittarius, you may need someone who accepts your need for experience. You may need something more than just what's in front of you in terms of life, opportunities, where you travel, what activities you embark in. Like, you need more experience. So if you have someone who is like, I want to stay where I am, I don't want to explore, I like this, that can be a little bit of an issue. It doesn't mean a relationship can't work. It means you have to accept what this person is if you're going to truly be with them. As far as Capricorn suns, Capricorn people may need, you need someone who accepts your need for structure, okay? Aquarius accepts your need for independence. You know, if you have a partner who doesn't want you to go by yourself somewhere, doesn't want you to do anything, it doesn't want you to experiment with your look or something like that, that can be an issue. And Pisces, you need someone who accepts your need for inspiration. So what if some of the things you may want isn't there yet, or something, you know, is a desire, right? That you need someone who kind of has that same level of hope as you, or accepts that in you. It is a relationship should not necessarily be about being the same person. Now, you may want to have the same morals and values as someone else, and for some people, spiritual or religious beliefs are also important, or being from the same culture, but you should have some core commonalities in terms of like life beliefs and to have a successful relationship, but it doesn't mean you have to be the same type of person. Okay. Now, next, what I would say, before I even jump to the moon, is I want to talk about the chart ruler. Okay. So in the house of the chart ruler, right? And I have a video I just did about the chart ruler if you're unsure of what that looks like or what that means. It is going to tell you your mission in life. It is going to tell you where you should exert the most energy. It's going to tell you your instinctual desire. A partner can even support this mission by being like, yep, go ahead. I support you in what you're doing, even if it's different than me. Or a partner can stunt you. A partner can take you off track if you let them, or, you know, and that's when people discover who they really are, right? After being sometimes in certain relationships. So your chart ruler is going to be very important. Now, for example, let's say you're a Sagittarius rising who has Jupiter in the third house. You need room and space to explore explore your thoughts. You need to explore what you're thinking and dabble in it and understand it and experience it, right? You're always going to have a little bit of an expansive mindset, right? You may dabble also in different disciplines or different studies. It might not mean that you're unstable. It just means you are someone who you're trying to figure things out. And the best way to do it is to dive in. Okay. Now, to some people that could look like, well, you don't know what you're doing. You keep changing what your mind, you keep changing your major, you keep changing what you want to do in terms of jobs, right? But for you, that might be what you need for whatever reason, based on what your chart says. An unsupportive partner or someone who cannot value this need will disrupt this in you. And it can cause you to not be living in fulfillment with your actual instincts. You're going against that. And even if you're happy with this person, you might not be happy with self. And again, this video is talking about self. How do you make sure you're happy? And then everything else builds around that, right? Now, you do have to compromise in a relationship, but it shouldn't be compromising who you are. It shouldn't be compromising your freedom. It shouldn't be compromising your sense of self, your autonomy. Like that shouldn't be compromising any type of relationship, especially if someone claims to care about you. All right. Now, if we move to the moon, of course, the moon represents our inner needs, our emotional impulses. You know, if you understand someone's moon sign, you understand what moves them. You understand why they did what they did. The sun doesn't necessarily always tell you why. It tells you what. It tells you what people are showing on the outside. But the moon is the inner reason why someone does what they do, the responses, right? Someone who understands your moon will make you feel safe or acknowledged emotionally. Someone who acknowledges you does not necessarily have to have the same moon sign, moon placement, or the moon in the same element. Though, if you're in the same element, there is a natural understanding in a way, okay? For example, let me say like a Pisces moon may choose to handle their emotions more internally. They need time to reflect. They need time to deal with what they're feeling. They need time to sit with it. An Aries moon might want to externalize what they feel. An Aries moon might say, let's just get up and go. Let's just do this. You know, yeah, I'm upset too, but come on, like we can get our mind off it. Let's do this. Okay. Right. And again, Aries moons, even though we're talking about the moon, the internal process, Aries moons are active. They're very active in order to really channel their emotions. And so what can happen is y'all are going to deal with things differently. That's fine. It's not that you two can't coexist in a relationship. It just means there needs to be a level of awareness and collaboration. And you know what? I'm going to go do this. I understand what you need. You go do that, right? Or I'm going to support you. And it doesn't have to be the Aries moon supporting the Pisces person. Even though the Pisces moon might be more sensitive. It could be the Pisces moon understanding, like, you know what? I've been sulking for too long. I've been, feeling bad about myself too long. All right, Aries moon, let me take your approach. So it just requires us to collaborate. In a relationship, you are sometimes going to have to compromise, right? If it's a relationship. Relate is a root word in a relationship, people. For people who think it's all about them and their needs. All right, Venus. So Venus is what you want. Okay, Venus is what you want from life, not life, but it's what you feel you should get, right? Venus, you receive, okay? Receive from partner, it's what you need from your surroundings, it's what you need in terms of your pleasures in life, it's receiving is also associated with money in addition to partnership. So your Venus sign is going to help you understand that. I'll put some links below where I have some videos I did a few years ago where I talked about the Venus sign and Venus houses. How in tune are you with what you desire from the world around you? How in tune are you? Okay. Sometimes people look at Venus. Venus can represent, if you are a person who dates women, what you want from a woman. Mars would be the opposite for male. Obviously, if you date non-binary people, or you have people who have just a different way in which they express their gender identity, you can use a mixture of the two, or you could look at the Mars and Venus sign and see what makes the most sense. That's how I would apply that. But with Venus, it is about, what it is that you need. And a lot of times we avoid that. The world tells us what we need. Our family tells us what we need. The society tells us what we should be attracted to, what should be drawn to. People tell you how you should make your money. What's going to make the most money, right? You go on social media and people are telling you how to be a millionaire overnight. And I'm going to sell you this class and tell you how to be a millionaire, right? But your Venus sign is going to help you understand like where you are going to feel, you're going to receive the most. You're going to receive the most when you are in settings, the house of your Venus is going to understand like what setting will you feel the most appreciated, the most valued, the most, right? The most, favored. Your Venus sign is important for you to understand like what you give off. You might not be conscious of what you give off. You might, if you're a Venus in Cancer, you might say Venus in Cancer, but I'm a fire sign and I'm not like that. But the thing with Venus in Cancer is Venus in Cancer, you will often see you need partnerships, and partnerships that's always be romantic, from people who you can trust, people who pour into you. Sometimes Venus in Cancer, you're going to need somebody that shows you emotion first before you trust them, especially if you have other placements in your chart. Whereas you might have a Venus and Pisces person where it doesn't matter how big and bad you present to the world. Venus and Pisces, you like kindness. You like people who are very, compassionate, people who show consideration, right? Those are the type of things. Doesn't mean that's who you are. Again, we have to look at the whole person, right? The whole chart. But that is what we want to look at with your Venus. Your Venus sign shows you how you feel appreciated in the world. What types of people, what types of energy do you need to be around to feel appreciated? Okay, so of course, if you have squares with anyone's chart, that can be sometimes a little bit contentious. Okay. Mars, look at your Mars sign. Again, I talked about that with Venus. Mars can be what you're attracted to as well in terms of masculine energy. And masculine energy doesn't have to mean you date men or males or people identify as male. You can date people who just have that Mars energy to them. But Mars can represent what excites you. Be honest with yourself. A lot of times people are not aware. And can there be placements in the chart that contradict each other? Yes. You're excited by this, but your moon says you really need a person who understands that you are more adventurous. But your Mars is like you're attracted to the people you got to figure out, right? So sometimes you do have a mission in life based on your chart to really unpack some of these things that you go through to understand yourself and understand what you're drawn to and why. And your past has an important part of that as well. So you look at your moon. Okay, so Mars represents the challenges and the tension we may experience, and sometimes challenge can be exciting. I know when we first think of challenge, we think, oh, this is something I don't want to do. But challenges, sometimes when we overcome a challenge, we feel good about ourselves, right? It can be exhilarating, especially when we talk about Mars and just the sexual nature of Mars as well. It could be what bothers you, yet it can keep things interesting. So your Mars sign is important for you to understand what you're attracted to. Maybe you don't date men, but Mars represents like, what gets you excited, right? Mars in Aries, it's a person who is a little bit maybe dominating, even if you don't at first admit that. It could be a person who's very adventurous, person who just get up and go type of energy. Like you're drawn to that because that matches the core energy of what your Mars is doing. Let's say your Mars is in Aries in the 12th house and you need somebody to awaken that part of you. That can sometimes be something you notice and see. You have Mars in Leo. You are maybe attracted to more people who may have status, or there being some level of adoration in the relationship. Someone who is a little bit more persistent, right? And I don't mean stalker persistent, but the person who is more a little bit more like pouring into a relationship, the person who's really just like always giving you compliments, the person who's kind of more dominant in that way. So it's all about unpacking. Now, again, this video is not going through all of the Mars signs, all the Venus signs, all the moon signs, because I already have videos where I talk about that. If you go to my playlist, you can see whatever placement typically that you're looking for there. This is talking about how do you understand the core energy of your own chart? How do we look at everything that we have? So people who, and last thing about Mars, people who are not in tune with their Mars sign can sometimes have unfulfilled desires they have yet to act on. Okay. Now, again, aspects can be a part of that too. Jupiter is important in the chart. Now, it depends on what type of branch of astrology you study. It depends on what beliefs you have about astrology. I've used it both ways. Now, Jupiter can represent children, and Jupiter could also represent your spouse. I think it makes sense in both contexts because remember, Jupiter is about expansion. And typically if you have a spouse, not everybody has children, but people choose to have children, expand their family in that regard. So what we want to think of here is expansive qualities. So you may find a sign of your Jupiter. So when you talk about relationships, this person can open up new avenues or ways of viewing the world. Remember, Jupiter, we talk about wisdom, we talk about outside of yourself. It is travel, it is experiences, it is risk taking, and what is marriage, relationships, whatever you got going on, but a risk, right? So I find that the sign of your Jupiter ends up in your partner's chart somewhere. Partner meaning a significant partner. If you date a lot of folks, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, and maybe you might see patterns in that, but I'm talking about like if you're married or if you're in a long-term relationship, committed relationship, or whatever the case may be, something that is serious or has been serious. Typically, your Jupiter sign will end up in their chart somewhere. So like, for example, I have a couple examples, or it could be the same. So like, for example, Jay-Z and Beyonce both have Jupiter and Libra, different degrees. But what you see there is their relationship is about, there is a level of, I don't want to get into who makes more money. They're both successful. They both have helped each other's career in some way. Again, I'm not going to get into who's the bigger performer at this point. People definitely are looking more like Beyonce is like obviously always touring, right? She's at that point, always touring, always working. Her and Jay-Z do a lot of business together, but Libra can also be business. So it works regardless of what we think about, like, in terms of their relationship, their marriage, they are on some way, there's some type of equality. There's some type of, they're benefiting from each other in terms of this marriage. Again, and I'm not talking about the relationship in terms of like, the love aspect and all of that. That's something I would dive into a different video. I'm talking about the aspect here between this Jupiter and Libra, and like they have this partnership situation. Prince William and Kate Middleton both have Jupiter and Scorpio. Now, you're not always going to see it's the same sign. In fact, most of the time, you're not going to have the same Jupiter sign unless you were born like really close time period with somebody else. But for example, Barack Obama has Jupiter in Aquarius and Michelle Obama has Saturn in Aquarius. And I don't have a ton of other examples offhand, but when I started to look at people I actually knew in real life and I looked at their chart and their partner's chart, it checked out. If they were in a marriage or a long-term committed relationship, and committed means y'all both have to understand it's committed. Committed doesn't mean one person's committed, another person saying, I don't know who that person is. So that's there. But their Jupiter, when I looked at someone's Jupiter sign, typically whatever sign it was in, Aries, Virgo, I'm making this up. I'm just thinking Scorpio, Aquarius, whatever, in the other person's chart somewhere. It doesn't mean the person had it in Jupiter, but maybe it was their moon sign, or maybe it was their Venus sign or something like that. Two, Saturn is going to represent what you take serious. Saturn is going to represent what you have the most tendency to accept long term. So if you have Saturn, in Scorpio, you might be someone who you need someone who's committed, who's invested, maybe a relationship where that person has invested in you financially or somehow in some way. Saturn in Pisces, you might need a relationship where you see the person has some level of consideration for you. The person has in some way been really, giving to you, or you've gone through something difficult that you had to heal from, and this person was there for you. If you have Saturn and Sagittarius, it could be, the relationship where the person has taught you a lot about the world or things outside of your experience. Maybe you grew up in a small town. This person, you moved away and now you love the life you live because your partner is from somewhere different, something like that. Saturn represents long-term commitment, but again, Saturn takes a long time. So you could be someone living your life, you're young, you're fun, you're having all this fun, but just because you have an attraction to something right now does not mean that's what you're going to settle down with unless you're fully committed to that, right? So Saturn can represent what types of people you take seriously. Also, the house is going to be important as well. Okay, because that's where you need to feel like you and the person have some sense of established understanding, established structures, established routines and habits and things that you are both trying to accomplish together, right? So wherever your Saturn house is, like, that's important to you. So see where that theme shows up in your relationship, right? So if you have Saturn in the third house, it might be important. Communication is going to be important. And you're going to settle down with the person who you feel validates the most of your, that validates it. It also respects what you think. If someone has Saturn in 10th house, you might need somebody who respects your career, respects your goals, even if sometimes they seem a little off. Saturn in 4th house, you might want someone that respects family, values, and tradition. So that's the way you could look at Saturn is going to be, so you have to ask yourself, does this person match with this? Okay. And Juno, lastly, what type of lessons do I need to learn? Remember, Juno is not a personal trait. Like, it's not Venus in Virgo. Juno is the lesson you're here to learn, and the house and the sign, degrees, and all that contributes to that, the sense you don't know you need. You don't know you need it. Like, you see your Juno on some sign, unless it's conjunct a personal planet or something, you're like, what? That's not me. But it's not you. Juno is about what you need. It's the ideal relationship lessons you learn. You are learning how to be in a committed relationship but still understand who you are outside of that. Juno and Aries, Juno and Libra, you're learning how to actually not be selfish. You're learning how to cooperate, collaborate, cohabitate with someone maybe, right? Juno and Sagittarius, you're learning how to understand perspectives that are broader than maybe what you're used to, right? And again, all of these placements, I have videos where I talk about all of the Junos and Venus and everything, and the houses and the signs. This video is just about like, how do you follow this like 8-step way to identify and discover your own relationship needs?